Millions of Americans are struggling with the economic fallout from the coronavirus. As we first reported yesterday, another 898,000 Americans filed for unemployment for the first time last week. That's an increase of 53,000 claims from the week before. Still, Washington remains logjammed over another round of financial relief. Both President Trump and Speaker Pelosi have proposed their own plans, yet neither party seems to want to budge. Even Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says President Trump's latest offer of $1.8 trillion is too expensive. The president was asked about this at an NBC town hall last night.
The problem you have is Nancy Pelosi. She couldn't care less about the worker. She couldn't care less about our people. And we should have a stimulus. And I want a stimulus. The Republicans will approve a stimulus. The problem is she doesn't want to do it because she thinks it's bad for her election.
Let's bring in Aimee Picchi now. She's a reporter with CBS News MoneyWatch. Hi, Aimee. So those $1,200 checks people got from the government were a huge part of the last stimulus package. Should taxpayers expect another one of those if a deal is reached?
Yeah, well, hey, thanks for having me on. And yeah, those $1,200 checks were incredibly popular with consumers and helped a lot of people get through the pandemic. And one thing that both sides seem to agree on is that they do want to renew those checks. But right now, those discussions and negotiations over another stimulus package are held up on some other issues that they're farther apart on. So while it's likely that you will see another check at some point, it's unclear when that's going to be because of these other issues that are cropping up, like unemployment is one of those big issues that they can't quite reach an agreement on.
And so what about increased weekly jobless benefits for the unemployed? I mean, we know that the original amount was $600 per week. The Republicans thought that was too much to do again. That has since been cut by 50% with strings attached. Democrats are trying to get back up to that $600 number. Where do we stand with all of this?
Yeah, this is one of the big points that Republicans and Democrats differ on. The extra $600 a week, which expired in July, was hugely helpful, not only to people who were experiencing unemployment, but for the economy as a whole. Because if you think about it, people get that money and they're going to pay their rent. They're going to go to the grocery store. They're going to fill up their car with gas. And that expired in July. And then there was an extra $300 provided by an executive order from President Donald Trump. And that only lasted 6 weeks. 19 states have already depleted that money. So that means in those states, unemployed Americans are getting their basic state unemployment benefits, which on average is a little bit over $300 a week. So you can see that that's quite a decline from where we were at. The Democrats want to renew that. They want another $600 per week for unemployed Americans. And there are many unemployed Americans still in the U.S. Unfortunately, there are more than 20 million people still collecting unemployment. The Republicans, from what we hear, want about $400 a week. They are afraid that $600 a week is a little too much, that'll be a disincentive for people to go back to work.
Secretary of Treasury Steven Mnuchin told CNBC on Thursday that, quote, a deal will be hard to get done before the election. He says there are still many issues. So, Aimee, what are those central issues, and what do you think will happen if another dose of fiscal stimulus is not passed soon?
Yeah, well, there are quite a few issues that they are differing on, and one of them is aid to state and local governments. The Democrats say state and local governments need help. And the Republicans want to give some help, but not quite as much. One of the things that some economists are worried about is that if states and local and cities don't get extra aid, they're going to start laying off workers. It could be anybody from teachers to people who work in parks and rec or different divisions of local government. So that's one thing that they're really still far apart on. As I mentioned before, unemployment is another. And so we will see. At this point, it's unclear. It seems to change every day, but the election is very close at this point. And economists and Wall Street experts that we speak to say at this point it's looking more likely like a lame duck kind of bill that's going to come through after the election. And that means that it's going to take longer for those benefits when the stimulus bill is approved. It's going to take longer for those benefits to get out to Americans.
And, there are still, apparently $300 billion left over from the previous CARES Act. And you'll recall that was the $2.2 trillion package passed in March. Any chance the government can use some of that money as a temporary solution to help those in need?
Yes, that's what Stephen Mnuchin was talking about, was using some of that money to help out different parts of the economy. But what he singled out was renewing or refreshing the PPP program. And if you remember, that's a program that helps small businesses pay for their workers to stay on the payroll especially if they're suffering from closures like many restaurants still are. So that's one program. And the other one that he wanted to use the money for is help for airlines. They're still suffering. Americans still don't really want to travel. They're concerned about the pandemic. So that's another way he wants to use that money. Unfortunately, it means that people who are on unemployment right now probably wouldn't get a benefit from that. It's possible, though, that if the PPP program is extended, that they could be helped if their employer decides to extend their payroll and keep them on the payroll that way.
And of course, Aimee, we're talking a lot about numbers and figures and stimulus negotiations, but we really can't forget that there are real people who are suffering economically because of the virus out there. And as part of your latest reporting, you spoke with several Americans who are close to losing all their state and federal unemployment help as the stimulus comes to an end. How are they dealing? Tell us about their personal situations and what frightens them the most.
Yeah, the words I heard from them were anxious, depressed, worried. Many of them saved when they got the $600 per week this summer, or the spring and summer, and they put some money aside. But that money is running out, and regular unemployment benefits are very small, as I mentioned earlier. It's hard to pay all of your bills on regular unemployment. So they are really hoping that a stimulus bill happens and that they see some more aid. But at the moment, they're very worried, and they don't know how long their money is going to last. So that the mood that I'm hearing from people is anxious, depressed, and worried.
All right. Well, Aimee Picchi with MoneyWatch, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.